Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is season 3 of Wrestling at Random, where we take all of the internet's wrestling programming, we dump it into the randomizer, we fire up the randomizer, it will pick a show literally at random, and we have to watch it. The randomizer giveth, and it taketh away. And this week, it did not do us any favors. We had a great week last week. If you're listening in linear fashion, last week were probably two of our best episodes. I've gotten nothing but positive feedback on the This Week in Pro Wrestling This Week episode in the free feed, and the Japanese All Japan Women's Wrestling in the Patreon, the paid feed, the bonus content, if you will. Those are two fantastic episodes. And now we must pay our penance. We must be punished for having such back-to-back great episodes as the randomizer picks ECW December to Dismember from 2006.
An all-time infamous pro wrestling show. I think the operative word or the operative phrase that you used a minute or so ago, you said that the randomizer will choose something and we have to watch it. This would be an instance where we had to watch this. We had no choice. This is a show that I had never seen before. I did not go out of my way to watch this.
Not many did. I'll get to that later.
This was not high on my list of shows to watch. It does join the pantheon of all-time great or all-time terrible shows that the randomizer has chosen for us. This is, in some ways, this is the WWE's version of Bash at the Beach 2000 in terms of just an all-time pilloried show that really nobody has positive thoughts about. I was following, if not necessarily watching, the ECW product from WWE at that time. So I remember all the discussion about this. I remember all the wondering of what are the matches going to be on this show because nothing was announced. But I never sought this out. So the randomizer, it's making me, as you said, do my penance. Telling me I'm a hardcore ECW fan. Well, then damn it, you got to watch December to Dismember 2006.
You did mention this is the WWE's incarnation of ECW. So following the success of the One Night Stand pay-per-view, they went through a relaunch of the ECW brand. You can hear the entire history of ECW Classic from Eastern Championship Wrestling all the way through. If you go back to season 1 and our first ECW show we reviewed. And then if you go to the WWE ECW television show we reviewed, we also gave the history of the WWE's ECW relaunch and ultimately its demise that you can find in season 2. So go to the back catalog, wrestlingatrandom.com, search for ECW, pull up those 2 episodes, and you will be able to get the entire history. We give a quick recap at the very top of those episodes, the history of ECW. So I'm not going to go into it here, but what I am going to tell you about is you mentioned this was an infamous pay-per-view. This show was the 2006 Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards winner for Worst Show of the Year.
Awards winner, you say, for worst show. I feel like it should be the awards loser, but yes, it got the most votes.
And it would, when I was searching, doing research for this show, it's funny because I searched for this show and a reference to this show showed up in every year in the Observer newsletter. And I'm like, oh, well, that's just for the awards issues. So let me skip the awards issues. I'm like, why is it showing up in this random reference from 2010? And I open up the Observer newsletter and it says, ECW December to Dismember is always mentioned when they're talking about how bad a show was. This is the benchmark. It was literally like, well, it was third place behind December to Dismember and these other 2 terrible shows.
It's the Mendoza line of wrestling pay-per-views, at least as the WWE is concerned.
It absolutely is. And stay tuned all the way until after we recap the main event of this show. And I'll tell you all the details of how that match happened, What happened?
Yeah, because I have questions.
Yes.
I remember a few things, again, reading the Observer and listening to Observer Radio and other things around this time. But again, having not seen the show, some of the details had gotten a little bit foggy. And I definitely have one very specific question.
Yeah, and we will get to all of that after the match. So let's start with with what happened leading up to the show. You mentioned you didn't know what was on the show because with 1 week to go before this horribly promoted show, the main event was the only match announced for the show.
That being the Extreme Elimination Chamber, the 6-man Elimination Chamber, for a ostensibly 3-hour pay-per-view. They only had the main event announced 1 week out.
The weekend of the show, 2 matches were announced. Brian Alvarez reports, as of Sunday afternoon of this show, WWE Creative was still only aware of 4 matches.
Jeez.
WWE
Creative was only aware of 4 matches. So that is not saying that 4 matches had been announced publicly,
no.
But the people in theory making the matches were only aware, quote unquote, of 4 matches on this 3-hour pay-per-view event.
Alvarez goes on to say, WWE seemed determined with this show to make everyone sad. I mean, seriously. What was this show's target audience? The old ECW fans were going to hate it. The new ECW fans were going to hate it. The Raw audience wasn't going to buy it. The SmackDown audience wasn't going to buy it. The TNA audience wasn't going to buy it. I have no idea what anyone was thinking. And in the end, this show would get Paul Heyman fired. Oh, and to note, the price of this show was $40 in 2006.
My goodness, that's wow. That's not money well spent. And to your point, that's something we'll get through, or I guess to Brian Alvarez's point, that's something we'll get to throughout this show, because it was a question I had and I wrote down several times as I was taking notes as I was watching it. Like, what? Not only what was the point, but who was this for?
Yep.
And it's fascinating just in terms of crowd reactions and yeah, we'll get there.
The show ended up doing 55,000 buys on pay-per-view.
Wow, that's 54,999 more than I thought it would have gotten.
That is a significant disaster at the time of WWE
Yes.
pay-per-views.
Yes.
So let's get into this show as we start with indoor pyro and the
hallmark of ECW. I have written it right here. It starts with a video saying 6 men will enter, knowing they will suffer the imaginable. And I write down, wow, this is just a cavalcade of WWE speak here in this promo video, which is topped off by The Big Show saying, I am ECW. We go directly from that to the to inside this building in Augusta, Georgia, an ECW stronghold if there ever was one. And it is brightly lit. There is a Titantron, and there is a 4th of July level amount of pyro here.
We do get the familiar sounds of Joey Styles.
Yes.
As he welcomes us to the James Brown Arena in Augusta, Georgia. There were 2,300 fans in attendance in a building that holds 8,000.
Wow.
So not a huge draw. You sarcastically mentioned Augusta, Georgia being an ECW stronghold, as yeah, this show did not draw in person or on pay-per-view.
No, well, and Joey Styles has a great line too. Right after the pyro ends, he says, "Augusta may forever be infamous after December to Dismember." He is in fact correct.
Joey Styles and Taz. Hell yeah. Now this
Yes.
is an announced team. I'm in.
If someone's going to guide us through what by all reports was a disaster of a show, at least we have Joey Styles and Taz here on this this bastardized version of ECW to get us through it.
I will say that these two, knowing that this was not a good show, were just there to entertain themselves.
Oh.
And a lot of times that can go real bad. But here, super entertaining with Joey Styles and Taz. Thank God. Could you imagine if this was the WWE ECW crew?
Todd Phillips
and Byron
Todd
Saxon.
Grisham,
Todd Grisham. Sorry, apologies to Todd Phillips. Todd Grisham and Josh Matthews and
Byron
Saxton. Yeah, could you imagine? Thank goodness we had
Well,
Joey
imagine
Styles and Taz.
2 to 3 times as much of that one ECW WWE TV show that we reviewed
God.
in season 2 of this podcast. It did actually in some ways remind me of the Taz Michael Cole Global Warning Tour.
You're right. Yeah.
The call of that show, where clearly on that one, they knew there was no way Vince McMahon was ever going to see that. So they were just, for one, they were just being more casual, which led to better calls of matches. And then they were also just trying to pop each other the entire time.
MNM, Mercury, Nitro, and Melina, they make their way out. Full red carpet entrance with paparazzi. They always had a tremendous entrance. However, this team was split up as part of the draft between Raw and SmackDown. And they were teaming together here for what we're told is one night only.
Yes.
But it turns out it was more nights to come after this. But yeah, we were told it was one night only here.
Well, not only were we told that they were going to be together for one night only, their opponents, the Hardy Boys, Matt and Jeff Hardy, we're told that this may in fact be the last time they team, as they are looking to go their separate ways as singles competitors. One thing I noted here, when the Hardys come out, for one, they get a huge reaction. And then Joey Styles says, listen to these ECW fans erupt. And, that is being said as more pyro goes off. I don't think these are ECW fans, other than maybe a couple hundred that we hear doing ECW type chants throughout. But it did feel like there was an edict on this show for Joey Styles and Taz to say the ECW faithful, quote unquote, as many times as possible on this show.
I did love every time Taz called Melina Marlena.
Well, no, he calls her Meliner.
It's great.
Meliner. Get your Red Hook accent correct here. My favorite thing maybe on this show, and it's not even something we saw, but it's news that was told to us. Apparently there was a December to Dismember press conference.
Well,
things happened. We also learned, this is maybe the only thing that I found less believable than a December to Dismember press conference. Apparently Matt and Jeff Hardy are former WCW tag team champions.
That's true, they were.
Those hazy days of the WCW championships at the end of the Invasion angle, heading into Survivor Series when that was blown off.
So you mentioned their opponents are Team Extreme, Matt Hardy and the WWE Intercontinental Champion Jeff Hardy. They are the opponents, and so the opening match on this ECW pay-per-view is a match featuring 4 guys not in ECW.
And not only not in ECW, like we're not just saying they weren't in real ECW. These 4 guys are not in the current, at this point,
they are not in the brand. No.
They're not on ECW, the television show. Yet they are here in the opener. This is where I note that not only what we just said as far as the guys in the match, but just everything about this, it's amazing how WWE went to the effort of resurrecting ECW and then did almost nothing to make it feel any different from a normal WWE television show or pay-per-view. It's not shocking because that's what WWE does, but just looking at it, I guess from a further out point of view, just to see any company do this and then not differentiate it at all it's just weird.
My notes say I'm going to need some bourbon for this show. And for the bourbon connoisseurs out there, I poured myself a glass of Eagle Rare to help me get through this show.
I went with some nice Kirkland signature purified water with minerals added for taste.
Nice. 3 dudes in this match have long hair braided. So here we go. The Hardys.
Not quite everybody wearing the same gear, but it's close. Can you tell, by the way, that we're stalling to talk about anything other than the actual show? Are you shocked? Probably not. And I ask the fine listener when I say you.
Although this match is one of the highlights of the show.
It is, and we'll get to it, this match is long.
It is. Yes.
They are trying to pad time here. There's a specific moment in this match where it feels like it's going to go to the finishing stretch, and then we get 12 more minutes.
There's legit 3 hot tags in this match.
Yes, and they are there's decreasing heat for each of these hot tags as it goes, as far as just the structure of the match. Let's plow through this.
Hardy's in control early. Nitro ends up with a counter, using a jawbreaker to cut off Jeff. Nitro misses a standing shooting star press, which is always impressive.
Yeah, that's not something you necessarily expect to see here in 2006 on a WWE ECW show. Maybe the most authentic ECW thing on this entire show, by the way, is the crowd chanting "Nitro sucks."
Yes. Matt Hardy's in. He hits a Splash Mountain Bomb on Nitro.
Yeah.
Matt then comes off the ropes. Melina grabs his foot from the outside. Matt then comes after her on the outside. Mercury clotheslines him while he's on the outside.
You mean the malicious Melina? We have a few moments here where they do still have to get WWE speak in, and Joey Styles says this multiple times. We also have the thing that I had forgotten about, I think just blocked it out of my mind, how in ECW, in the WWE, the wrestlers, they were not obviously wrestlers. That can't be the case. They were not superstars. They were extremists.
They were. So these guys were superstars, though, because they're not on the brand.
Yes, these guys are not official extremists. They are bona fide superstars.
They're also not exhibitionists. We'll get to that later.
That is true. That is true.
Back inside, more double teaming by MNM. Even Melina interfered doing a head scissors, much to Taz's amusement.
Yeah, Taz loved that. How about also Eminem hits the poetry in motion, and then we get the first time for, and then this just goes on and on and on and on in this match. The screaming.
That's my next bullet. It says Melina's screaming is so annoying.
Because again, I'm not going to get into the analysis of wrestling screams here. I feel like that's probably too meta even for us, but if a scream can be dull and monotone but annoying at the same time, that's what this is. And it just goes on and on. And I'll just say, and I think we mentioned it before, I'm not overly impressed by Melina as a manager here.
No, not at all. Matt counters a double suplex into a double twist of fate, but can't make the tag to Jeff as Eminem knocks him off the apron. Eminem hits the Hardys' poetry of motion in one corner. Then they went for a twist of fate, swanton finish, but Matt shoves Mercury off into Nitro, and he makes the hot tag number one to Jeff.
The first hot tag of many, as you said, number one. Jeff runs wild, flying forearms, clotheslines, elbows, hits a double leg drop to each man's lower abdominal region. Or no, the double leg drop, to Mercury's lower abdominal region, and then Nitro makes the save. We then get a move that I had forgotten that Jeff Hardy did regularly, the sit-out gourd buster.
He did, yes. And then Matt clotheslines Mercury over the top to the floor. Matt does a plancha over the top onto Mercury. Then Nitro comes flying with a huge dive over the top rope, wiping out both Matt and Mercury.
Nitro's dive is awesome. That pescado by Matt, it looked horrible for him. Like, he made it over great, and then he somehow ended up just taking a flat back bump, even though he got caught. That looked painful.
Yeah, that Nitro dive was phenomenal. Cleared the top rope by a mile and just went way over. Then Jeff comes off with a dive from the top rope onto the pile.
We get ECW chants. Also, this is where, like, as I see him on this show, I'm genuinely shocked that Johnny Nitro, all the different names that he had, that he never was a top guy in WWE, because he has everything they want. He looks great. He's got a great body. He can fly. He wasn't a terrible talker. He's just a freak athlete. He definitely stood out here.
Yeah, and he came from Tough Enough. If you are a Patreon or bonus content subscriber, you can hear us review a Tough Enough episode that Johnny Nitro, John Hennigan, was on. So you can go back and check that out. Back inside the ring, we get a twist of fate. Jeff goes for the swanton, but Nitro pulls Mercury out of the way. He crashes and burns. Nitro then, with a springboard drop kick onto Jeff, gets a 2 count, and then more MNM double teaming.
And more Molina screaming is not good. We get some Hardy chants. They hit a double catapult on Jeff Hardy into the corner, knock him down with forearms. Again, this is just going on and on. Mercury puts Hardy in a surfboard. We get a fist drop. Joey Mercury, I was not particularly impressed by in this match. Like, he was fine. There were a few spots. There was one in particular a little bit earlier in the match where he got hit with a fairly significant move and then was just up right away, no selling it. And it wasn't in a way that made sense at all in the match. So yeah, this was Johnny Nitro's team at this point for sure.
There was like, because they reunited here and they decided to keep them together for another match. That other match was a ladder match where Mercury's face got busted up.
Oh, that's right.
That was like a week after this or whatever.
Oof.
Yeah.
I do recall that.
Mercury to the outside. He pulls Matt off the apron while Jeff was trying to make the tag, but Matt is busy fighting on the outside with Mercury. So MNM continue the beatdown of Jeff. He gets sent to the corner, counters by running up the buckles, and hits his Whisper in the Wind dive, the worst name for a move. He then makes hot tag number 2 to Matt. Matt beats up both MNM members, hits his second rope leg drop, gets a 2 count. Mercury counters Jeff's top rope power bomb with a Frankensteiner off the top.
Yeah, this was impressive. I'll give Mercury credit for that. I also really liked a little bit earlier, just prior to this sequence, we had MNM hitting a slingshot variation, an outside-in slingshot variation of the old demolition finisher.
The Hardys hit stereo superplexes off adjacent corners.
This was cool. I honestly don't remember seeing this too many times before. I guess because of the margin for error is pretty thin as far as making sure you don't superplex the guys into each other.
Jeff with a cover, but Molina has the ref distracted. She tries to hit Jeff, who catches her arm. Nitro then runs in, tries a drop kick. Jeff moves out of the way, and Nitro drop kicks Molina off the apron. This was one of the biggest pops of the match here.
Not only was it one of the biggest pops in the match, but it should have been the finish. Jeff with a great
and he
roll
rolled
up.
him up for 2. It absolutely
awesome
should have been the
fall.
finish. Yeah,
It just felt like that's what it was building to, but no. MNM then hits the snapshot, which is sort of a DDT version of a 3D, which I found this amusing because this was the old Simon and Swinger finisher in ECW. And on November to Remember 2000, we saw the Simon and Swinger successfully hit this move for the win on Joey Mercury.
Oh, that's right.
When
Joey
he was
Mercury
teaming with Christian York. It was Joey Matthews and Christian York as a team in ECW.
Yeah, you can hear that in the back catalog as well. Jeff on Mercury's shoulder while Nitro DDTs him, like you mentioned. Now we get both Matt. So Matt makes the save after the snapshot. Jeff is on the top. They go for a snapshot off the top rope,
which would have been death.
But Matt grabs them and hits Twists of Fate off the top rope. Jeff then
double on each of them, basically like a falling cutter off the ropes like DDP used to do sometimes.
Jeff then hits a swanton off the top onto both MNM members and gets the pin. This started incredibly slow. It went too long. It picked up a ton at the end and made for a fun opener, which turned out to be one of the highlights of the show.
Yeah, it had to be, 23 minutes?
It was long, yeah.
It was like a 23 minute match that if this was 12, even 15, it would have been really good. Like we described, it had some good action, some weird, awkward moments. The flow was off because of the way they stretched it out. It felt like there was a really good, almost indie style tag team match trying to break through the WWE formula, but it just couldn't quite get there.
Rob Van Dam with an interview somewhere in the void, just a black behind him.
I expected next to him for Vince McMahon to be saying Brett screwed Brett. That was the same. Like you said, it was a black void. I guess this was maybe the most ECW thing on the show because this looked like the same black void that Taz did his promos from back in the day.
He mentions that the risks of this Elimination Chamber match are worth it for the ECW title. Next out is Matt Stryker.
Oh, God. So the next thing we hear is the only sound more annoying than Melina's scream.
A school
school bell. And it goes on and on and on. And then it's like Matt Stryker saying, I'm a teacher, over this ringing school bell. This brought back memories of Diesel's car or truck engine noises for music that we talked about a few episodes ago. Matt Stryker is out with a sleeveless sweater, I guess a sweater vest that's on. His gear is on under it. And I immediately think, for those people that are listening that follow AEW, that Matt Stryker here in 2006 is the most bargain basement version of MJF you have ever seen.
Oh, not even playing the same game. Not even in the same league.
He's a cheap version of Brian Adias.
Yeah, he's his own special not good here.
Jesse Barr.
Yeah, we're told, well, although he talks a lot better than Jesse Barr.
Yes, the lowest bar, no pun intended, to clear, but yes.
So Stryker is introduced as a former high school social studies teacher from New York City who's now a wrestler, and he has his face on his ass, on his gear. And
that's the comedy for this match. His face is on the back of his gear, and we're all laughing about that the entire time. Ha ha ha.
He's got the mic. He says that he's your teacher, and Stryker wants the rules to be followed. And then he goes through all these rules, and no moves off the top rope, no foul language, all these Stryker's rules here, basically to keep the match clean, because his opponent is an ECW original, Balls Mahoney.
Yes, I'm excited. Big Balls Mahoney fan from back in the ECW days. And not only is it Balls Mahoney, he's coming out to his dubbed music that is the same music he has on the reformatted episodes of ECW television on WWE's streaming service. And he's out here. He's looking like Balls Mahoney, and the crowd is pretty into him. They're chanting balls. They're clapping along to the music. But I don't think we're going to see a match here that is what people want to see out of Balls Mahoney.
I'm pretty sure we talked about it the last time we saw Balls Mahoney, but this is awesome knockoff music. It is a phenomenal knockoff version of Big Balls by AC/DC. It's tremendous. It sounds just like the song. They did a great job knocking it off.
It is in the pantheon of knockoff wrestling music. It is right there with DDP's WCW music, Raven's WCW music. We'll get to it later on this show. Tommy Dreamer's music is a pretty good knockoff of Man in the Box. So when they get it right, they get it right. When they don't, you get New Jack's music. It's fake streaming service music. But yes, this certainly felt totally fine.
Taz and Joey Styles are cracking each other up at this point, and it is delightful. I'm having a blast.
Yes, mostly about the back of Stryker's trunks and just about everything else. We do get a lot of Stryker sucks chants. I note that he's as bad or as boring of a wrestler as he is an announcer at this point.
Balls does the worst leapfrog, like barely clearing Stryker's head, and the way he's moving, he might have got clipped by the top of Stryker's head.
Yeah, but I feel like it's the problem of whoever's booking Balls Mahoney to do a leapfrog. I'm not blaming Balls on that. He put a quality effort into this. He tried, which is more than you can say about a lot of other people on this program.
Balls hits the post with his shoulder. Stryker then hits a divorce court, taking him down by the arm. Loud.
Then he just falls back first on the arm. Like, it's not even like a senton. It's just like he took a training school back bump on the arm.
Loud Stryker sucks chants, and they are correct in their analysis.
They're correct. They don't like Stryker, and they're also, this is not, just to reiterate what I said a minute ago, this is not what they're here to see Balls Mahoney do. And this is maybe the first point on this show where I really thought kind of what you said, Brian Alvarez had mentioned, that like, who are they trying to book this show for? Because you're putting an ECW guy like Balls Mahoney on, and then you're having him do just a normal WWE pay-per-view match. So the WWE fans that are there, like, they don't care about Balls Mahoney. the Balls Mahoney ECW fans that are there, they don't want to see this version of Balls Mahoney doing this type of match. So what are we accomplishing?
Stryker is so boring on offense. It's basic, and it's put together in a way that is not interesting. No, and it's boring.
Killer Khan would be lecturing him about how boring he is. Blackjack Lanza would be telling him he needs to speed it up a little bit.
Balls then hits a side slam, goes to the top, but Stryker shakes the top rope and crotches Balls.
Well, if you remember, one of the rules, part of Stryker's rules, which apparently were ripped from the pages of the Bill Watts rule book, was that you could not come off the top, which I was amused by, that Matt Stryker was worried about the high-flying offense of Balls Mahoney, or as he was referred to in the magazines back in the day, B. Mahoney.
Stryker rolls him through into an armbar, Fujiwara style.
Ooh, that Yoshiaki Fujiwara will punch you in the eye for saying that was Fujiwara style. This was the worst Fujiwara armbar I have ever seen.
So bad. Horrendous. It was so bad.
Horrendous. I have full confidence that Kelly later on in this show could have busted out a better Fujiwara armbar than Matt Stryker did here.
Balls gets to the rope for the break. Balls makes a comeback with punches. He almost hits like a shoot backdrop here.
Yeah.
And then Balls grabs Stryker coming off the ropes, hits a sit-out spine buster, and gets the pin. Balls is your winner. The finish came out of nowhere, but thank God it came.
Yeah, total nothing match. The crowd wanted to love Balls Mahoney here, and they wanted to see ECW things, which is it's the beginning of a theme we'll see throughout the show with the actual ECW originals that are on this particular event. But all they were getting from Balls was just typical, wrestling style stuff. We saw they got into the punches, chanting Balls along with it, but this was not much, and thankfully it was over.
CM Punk is warming up, shadowboxing in the back, but the camera catches something and runs over. We see Sabu is down and being attended to by EMTs. Paul Heyman is there yelling, asking what happened. Sabu gets stretchered out, and the crowd immediately starts chanting, "Bullshit." They are not happy that Sabu is going to be out of the Elimination Chamber.
Well, no, yeah, exactly. You figure coming into the show, one of the things you could bank on, if nothing else, is Sabu doing crazy stuff in an Extreme Elimination Chamber main eventing a WWE pay-per-view. Like, you figure you could count on that. We're not going to get that here. When I mentioned earlier that Balls Mahoney was at least trying in that match, and it was more than a lot of other people here on this program, I was specifically referring to one of the fake EMTs during this segment, who is almost laughing as he says, "Sabu, can you hear me?" And then he says to no one in particular, he's still unresponsive. And I am saying this with more charisma, if you can believe that, than this guy did.
Yeah, people are mad that Sabu is not going to be in this match, and so am I.
Well, you know what can turn the crowd around, though? I think there was probably a large core of people who were big-time Inoki Genome Federation fans or didn't know they would be in the future. They'll be excited because they get to see Sylvester Terkay teaming with Elijah Burke.
Elijah Burke and Sylvester Terkay make their way out.
The Man Bear.
Their opponents, the FBI, this incarnation of the full-blooded Italians, are Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke, accompanied by Trinity.
There's a few things going on here. First, this promo from Elijah Burke, it's terrible. Like, people think of Elijah Burke, the Pope, whatever you want to call him, as being a good talker. He wasn't here. He starts talking about them being like wild animals in heat, which Joey and Taz spend the rest of the show trying to figure out what in the world is going on. This is strange. Also strange, FBI come out to dubbed music, which I don't understand because they clearly had some sort of WWE stock music that was used here on this pay-per-view. That was not usable, I guess. They have dubbed music that is not their really stereotypical Italian mafia movie music they have on the ECW TV shows on WWE streaming service. And the strangest thing of all with this, Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke are booked as a babyface tag team here.
So weird. The match starts with Guido stealing Elijah's hat. And, of course, we get thunderous ECW chants. No, we don't, because this is ridiculous.
No, the crowd was trying, but even they couldn't try with this.
No. Turkai is in with Mama Luke, who missed a charge in the corner. Little Guido tags in. He tries a crossbody off the top, but Turkai catches him, throws him over the top onto Mama Luke on the floor. That is the most excitement in this entire match.
For me, the most exciting thing about this match was hearing an FBI chant. In all my years of watching ECW, I never heard that. It was funny, though, because I mentioned earlier there is a core of maybe I don't know, maybe a couple hundred is being generous, but there's a small core, a very small core of ECW fans that were here, and they were trying so hard to do all the old ECW chants. Earlier when Melina was out, they were doing the I'm not going to say it, that chant. Here we had a few people trying to get the old "Where's my pizza" chant going for the FBI. It did not catch on though here in Augusta.
No, but because the crowd is quiet, you can hear like individuals yelling at people. We'll hear it later during the Heyman promo.
This was basically the Evolve show with 2,000 more people.
Yes.
As far as the crowd.
So we get a double team by Burke and Turkai. Mama Luke tags in. It breaks down with all four men in the ring. Double drop kick to Turkai. Double flapjack on Burke. Gets a 2 count. Then Guido's dumped outside. Turkai with a forearm from the apron. Burke then hits the Elijah Experience and gets the win. Total nothing match.
The Elijah Experience, you might ask, what is that? It's the stroke.
Yeah, this is nothing.
It's not good. Then Turkai, for no reason at all, hits a muscle buster after the match as one lone guy chants TNA, TNA, apparently for Samoa Joe. I was amused by that.
In the back, Sabu is loaded into an ambulance. And then Sean Davari comes out, accompanied by the great Khali.
An ECW act, if there ever was one. Although, I wrote that down, then I thought, well, we did get a lot of weird, random stuff in ECW. I mean, Brockus made an appearance, for example. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that if ECW would continue to exist, a down on his luck great Khali might have gotten a 911/Sid type of run in ECW. Taz then calls the great Khali, quote, one of the most impressive human beings I've ever seen in my life.
His opponent is Tommy Dreamer, and I made the same joke, and I said, if Davari's got Khali, Tommy Dreamer should come out with 911.
Yes. The weirdest thing about this match, and again, this is a match that involves the great Khali and Tommy Dreamer. The weirdest thing for me in this match is those weird long velvet pants that Tommy Dreamer is wearing.
He looks very comfy.
He does. He looks very comfy. He also has by WWE standards, a pretty cool Tommy Dreamer shirt on. So I'll give them credit. They made a Tommy Dreamer shirt, probably sold a few of them. Maybe if they would have made it velvet, they would have sold even more. I also noticed here that former WCW referee Mickey J is officiating this one.
This match is here for the announcers to talk about what could have happened to Sabu.
Yes.
And then while this is going on, Dreamer with some offense. He hits the ropes and Khali pulls the rope down. Dreamer goes flying over the top to the floor.
This is terrible. Khali pulls the rope down and Dreamer is looking at it the whole time and just decides to run and eliminate himself from an imaginary Royal Rumble.
Yes.
Shades
of Terry Powers if you are a subscriber to the bonus content. So Khali gets tossed by the referee for that interference. Davari puts on a long chin lock. This crowd is bored. So am I.
Yeah, this is... It's really weird because one of the things when you would see ECW guys in WWE out of context, I remember this a lot with Taz before they shifted him to being an announcer, is how strange it was if you were an ECW hardcore fan to watch Tommy Dreamer selling like he's dying in the ring from a reverse chinlock from Sean Davari after watching everything that he went through on a nightly basis in ECW. It's just so weird.
Dreamer fights back with punches. He takes the longest route possible to an inverted DDT. He flips the guy around and then picks him up for no reason. ridiculous.
It is a finisher. This version of that is a finisher in No Mercy, though, for N64. So maybe Tommy was playing that, and catering before the show. It's great, though, because after this, we get another reverse chinlock, and this is where the fans start getting restless. I hear, again, one lone voice call out from the wilderness and yell, "Where's the extreme?"
So you get Daivari in the Tree of Woe. He gets hit with the Tommy Dreamer running drop kick.
Without the chair. Like, the fans get so excited for this, and then he doesn't have the chair, and they're just like, light applause.
Dreamer gets the DDT, but Daivari reverses it into a roll-up, grabs the tights, gets the 3 count. So Daivari with the win.
Completely taking the air out of this crowd that was already pretty much a deflated balloon, but they were so excited to see Tommy Dreamer. I feel like they had resigned themselves after seeing Balls Mahoney in this environment that they weren't going to get to see true ECW Tommy Dreamer, but they at least wanted to see Tommy hit a DDT on a geek and win the match. They didn't get that. And it was apathy abounds.
And then after, on the stage, Khali does a standing choke, a tree slam, then onto the metal stage. Tommy Dreamer takes a tough bump. So bad night.
Tough bump is an understatement. This was horrifying. There is no give on the steel grating,
metal,
obviously.
yes.
And he bounces. And they play it at least 5 times
to their credit. To their credit, they made it count because they showed it to us 5 times at least.
Yeah, it was the only ECW type thing that happened to this point, and they milked it for all it was worth. Again, another lone voice from the crowd at this point yells, "This isn't extreme, it's entertainment." And I just lost it. We then get Tommy is great here. Like, he's face first. He's on the grating. He's telling the trainer he can't feel his feet. We get quiet voice from the announcers. Tommy finally stirs, stumbles back up to his feet, gets a good little reaction and a light ECW chant as we go to the back.
Heyman's in the back. He confronts Hardcore Holly, as one does on an ECW show. Heyman tells him that he picked Holly to replace Sabu. This is a downgrade. Oof.
This is the downest of grades if you're an ECW fan. And again, just keep in mind, we are not terribly far removed from the second one-night stand ECW show at Hammerstein Ballroom. Like, they did make an effort to make ECW feel like ECW. You fast forward to this pay-per-view, which I believe was the next ECW pay-per-view under the WWE heading, and this is what we have.
Mike Knox and his partner Kelly come down. Kelly grabs the mic. She wishes CM Punk good luck in the chamber later because she has a crush on him in the storyline, even though she's Knox's girlfriend.
Yeah, the story is she is an exhibitionist and she likes CM Punk, and Mike Knox is a jealous boyfriend. And they picked maybe the 2 least charismatic human beings on the face of the earth to play each of these 2 roles. Kelly, God bless her, is just so vacant, and Mike Knox.
Vacant is the exact correct word to describe Kelly. Thank you. I was struggling with trying to put a word to that. Yes, vacant is exactly correct.
Meanwhile, Mike Knox is, in any other era, in any territory, he's the tall jobber. Like, yes. He's big, he's huge, but he never, ever, ever wins a match. Like, I can just see him losing on WCW Saturday night every week.
Their opponents are vampires. Ugh. Kevin Thorne and his partner Ariel. They're legit like vampires. And
that's the story. Kevin Thorne looks like a guy who 10 years ago was the high school quarterback, and then his vampire girlfriend convinced him to cosplay at a convention. That's what looks like it's going on here. Kevin Thorne, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, the former Mordecai, if you remember that gimmick.
You are correct, sir. I
hate myself for remembering
the former Mordecai, which was
I'm mortified that I remembered that.
Yes, that was a short-lived, terrible character. to be replaced by this short-lived, terrible character. And after this act was cut from WWE, do you know what Vampire Ariel went on to do?
I do not.
She went to TNA as Salinas, the manager of LAX.
I was so disappointed. I thought you were going to tell me that she joined the Sinister Minister.
She did not.
to conjure up the blood of the Audad on TNA pay-per-views. But sadly, apparently that was not the case. My takeaway from this as we see Kevin Thorne is that he is Vampire Baron Corbin.
But worse, but more boring.
Which is, talk about breaking a scale. The idea that someone could be a more boring Baron Corbin than Baron Corbin. Joey Styles says, as Mike Knox and Kevin Thorne are in the ring, he says, direct quote, "These are two very, very large young extremists."
Thorne and Knox fought for a while. Nothing happened. We're again alerted to the fact that, I don't know if you know this or not, Adam, but Kelly is an exhibitionist.
I was aware. If I wasn't aware by the beginning of this, it's something I will never forget.
It's like they had a quota where they had to get in the term exhibitionist 50 times before this was over.
There were several things. They had to say exhibitionist. They also had to say the ECW faithful throughout the night. If they hit their mark of those two things, they each got like a $20,000 bonus.
All right.
The most noteworthy thing to me about this match by far is how there is zero reaction from the crowd for anything. No. Like if you overlaid the audio of, let's say, 30 minutes before the dark match on this show happened and you put it to this match, it would be no different. If this was happening in an empty arena, you would not be able to tell the difference.
So here's one of my biggest pet peeves. In an intergender tag team match, the rules state that if someone tags out, you have to. So if a guy tags out, then both women have to come in.
It can only be a man versus a man or a woman versus a woman.
In this match, Ariel tags herself in, and then Mike Knox walks over to his corner and tags Kelly, which is unnecessary with those intergender rules. You just need to walk out of do not walk over there and tag your partner. Drives me nuts. You do not have to tag. When Ariel tagged in, Kelly's automatically the legal person. Huge pet peeve. It drives me nuts, and I saw it here, and I almost turned off the show in anger. I'm like, come on. We don't need to do that.
And it happens all the time. It's not right, but I can recall many other WWE intergender matches that were the exact same way, and I would have the same reaction when I would watch it.
This is why we do a podcast together.
Exactly.
We get hair pulling stomps, a horrible elbow drop by Ariel. This still believe horrendous.
At some point in this match there is a better Fujiwara armbar from Kelly or Ariel than there was from Matt Stryker.
Kelly goes to tag Knox, and he Rick Martel's her.
Yes.
And just walks away.
At this moment, I got up, went to my closet, and pulled out my Strike Force shirt that you got me for a previous holiday or birthday. I cannot remember which, and felt the need to put that on in honor of this tribute to the Strike Force breakup.
Yeah, he walks away, so immediately loud CM Punk chants while Kelly's getting beat up, but he doesn't come out. We just get a crappy STO for a pin.
Yes.
Ariel beats up Kelly after the bell. CM Punk doesn't make the save, but the Sandman in the crowd comes down to make the save.
With the most generic music ever. This is
a horrible knockoff.
This does not pass the Balls Mahoney test when it comes to knockoff entrance music for ECW wrestlers.
Now, Sandman hits the ring. He canes Thorne. Hits him over and over and over with
but
his
it's cane. Like safe caning him. He doesn't really swing it. Then he is just hitting the mat as he's hitting Thorne. Again, I know it's what you got to do, but even this did not feel much like ECW. I do want to mention before we get away from this, I thought of a way for the Big Audio Nightmare listeners and New Japan fans that are listening to this podcast right now. When I saw Ariel hit that STO, I thought, my God, there is a way to make the House of Torture even worse than it already is.
Yes.
Do not show this show to Dick Togo or Gato.
Now we get Sandman chasing Thorne up the ramp. He hits him with some more cane shots. And then we go to a Bobby Lashley video package. Paul Heyman and his guys attack Lashley. Lashley's in the back to do an interview now. He says he's one man, one mission to become ECW champion. They kept it short. Not a lot of confidence in a promo here, but a pretty good video package.
A good video package, a terrible promo for a guy who is supposed to be a top guy at this point. Bobby Lashley is the reason that God created managers in 2006, but we are in WWE in 2006, so you really can't have managers unless they're like a Melina or Ariel type. It's not a manager to cut a promo for you, but my God, did Bobby Lashley need Paul Heyman or someone of the like here to cut this promo for him?
Heyman comes out, and he comes out to the original ECW theme song. Thank God we got to hear that on this show.
Yeah, thank God we got to hear that. But you talked about earlier how there are a lot of elements of this show that more than anything just brought on sadness. And man, hearing that theme song after being about 90 minutes deep into whatever the hell this was that we were watching, that generated sadness in my heart.
He comes out with two dudes in riot gear helmets, and you can't tell who they are. And then Joey Styles says, to make fun of Paul Heyman's ponytail, he says, 1982 called, and they want their hair back. To which Taz replies, you better get it quick. And I laughed so hard because of the balding Paul Heyman. Love a good joke. These guys on fire. Good promo from Paul Heyman. Talks about how Hulkamania dies with Hogan, the Woo dies with Flair, but ECW will live on. ECW will now be a global phenomenon instead of the days of RVD, Sabu, and the Sandman.
Yeah, he's saying it basically like, the ECW that you remember sucked, but the ECW I'm creating with Big Show and Test, that's the ECW, that's the global phenomenon.
Hardcore Holly, bring on the phenomenon.
Yes. They then say 6 of the top athletes in the history of ECW, and a guy in the crowd yells, "Where's the franchise?" Oh, these ECW fans scattered throughout this crowd just cracked me up, but also made me sad. When it was mentioned that Sabu will not be there, the crowd boos. We get chants of bullshit again. As you said, Paul Heyman says, the day of Sabu and the Sandman and RVD has come to an end. Like it or not, this is the age of the global phenomenon of ECW, led by The Big Show.
To which that same fan yells, he's retiring next year.
Yes. Loved it. These fans were so much better than anything else on this show. This is a show where if you're going to subject yourself to it, plug your earbuds into your Roku remote, because you'll be rewarded with these fans in Augusta. We then get, as the Elimination Chamber is lowered from the roof, I guess from the ceiling to be more accurate, we get a rules page graphic, which among many other things of these rules are simple type of explanations, it says men will be loaded into pods.
Yes, 4 men loaded into the pods. 2 men start. After a 5-minute period, a pod will open, releasing a competitor and a weapon.
We'll get to these 5-minute periods should definitely not have been 5 minutes.
Elimination by pin or submission. The last man remaining will be the ECW champion.
We should explain, or we should describe the Elimination Chamber cage itself for people who have never seen one before. I actually think this was the first Elimination Chamber match that I ever saw. I don't think we've reviewed one on this podcast.
We have not reviewed one on this podcast, correct.
And I was familiar with it, and I'd seen clips, but I don't think I'd ever watched a whole Elimination Chamber before. But so you have the ring, the regular, normal WWE regulation size ring. You've got a circular cage around sort of the perimeter of the ring. The cage is small, like chain link, instead of, it's not like fencing. It's also not the old blue bars. It's not the bars you'd see on the Hell in the Cell. And then on each side, basically bridging the apron of the ring to where the circle arcs on each side of the ring, you've got this like steel grating that leads to the cage. And then you've got these plastic pods in each corner.
They would soften that metal grating outside in future chambers, but this is one of the early chambers
Good idea.
where it was not softened, and that was metal and brutal every time someone hit that. And so the ECW World Champion, The Big Show, he gets into his pod with a barbed wire baseball bat.
A barbed wire baseball bat, I would say. This is the fakest looking barbed wire you have ever seen on a wrestling show.
CM Punk is out. In his pod is a steel chair.
I'm surprised you're not commenting on that CM Punk entrance music that you loved from this era of his run in WWE.
This is not Cult of Personality CM Punk. This is just a generic metal riff, and not a great song, but great Chicago tights, great Chicago flag tights by CM Punk,
and great crowd reaction for him. The crowd is very early on,
so popular.
His run in WWE here in ECW. One of the only guys, probably the only guy on this show on the ECW roster that was not in ECW when it actually existed, that in some way, shape, or form felt like ECW to the fans, and he was clearly embraced. We did have a great, hilarious image of when Punk gets in and he goes over the pod that the Big Show is in, and Show is all angry and his pod starts fogging up. I lost it.
We then get Test in his pod with a crowbar. Bobby Lashley is in his pod with a table.
These entrances take forever. And by the way, this pod, I don't understand how it's big enough to have Bobby Lashley and a full table, but somehow it is.
So the first two competitors that will start the match, Hardcore Khali and Rob Van Dam. Punk and RVD are by far the most popular people on this show.
Oh, absolutely.
So Khali and RVD, they fight to the metal area outside the ring that we described. Van Dam goes off the top, leaps onto the side of the cage, and
Spider-Man
style, and then jumps at Khali but misses and hits the top rope, chest first, bouncing off.
Yeah, basically hot shots himself as Hardcore Khali moves. I did recall, because I was watching occasionally the WWE ECW TV show when it first started, just, so desperately hoping that it would feel like ECW. And they did mention on commentary, and I remember this match, RVD and Bob Holly had a singles match that ended up with RVD putting Holly through a table, and Holly needed 22 stitches in his arm, I believe. Nasty stuff. So this was in some way, I guess, a bit of a revenge match here to start off the Extreme Elimination Chamber.
Van Dam slammed on the metal, and then Holly comes off the top, going for nothing, and gets a boot to the face. This is your favorite, Adam.
It's the classic Arn Anderson spot, where Arn would jump off the top rope, going for nothing, and he would just direct his face into the waiting elevated foot of his downed opponent. As dumb as this was, I enjoyed the tribute to that ridiculous spot here.
Right, like if Van Dam didn't get his foot up, what would have happened?
Exactly. It's always what you ask in these situations, and here he just would have landed on his feet and I guess looked at Rob Van Dam. That's the only thing that it looked like was happening here.
Really cool move here is we get a rolling thunder by Van Dam, but he goes over the top rope to the steel outside the ring.
Yes, by far the coolest thing so far on this show. Rob Van Dam finding ways to innovate on this terrible show. He at least found a way here in the Elimination Chamber to make it interesting to himself and his fans, if no one else.
The clock counts down, and the crowd is chanting loudly for CM Punk. And it's CM Punk, and the crowd is excited. CM Punk gets released from his chamber. He comes in.
First, he gets released from his chamber, and it's like, remember the game show, The Weakest Link? I feel like that's what's happening here. Is we get this overhead shot. We see each of the pods, like a spotlight shines on one, shines on the other. Then he eventually stops on CM Punk's pod. We hear some wacky music, and then he's released.
He throws a chair at Holly, hits a springboard clothesline off the top to Van Dam. He then throws the chair to Van Dam, who catches it and throws it hard back at Punk's head.
This is clearly pre Chris Benoit tragedy, horror, double murder, homicide, the whole thing, where they then got a lot more serious about stopping chair shots to the head. We're in the end days of it, but this is absolutely the era of unprotected chair shots to the head, and this was very cringeworthy to see CM Punk take this.
Cool move here is that the chair is on the mat. RVD tries a leg sweep, but Punk jumps into the air, and as he comes down with a leg drop to the back of RVD's head, sending him into the chair. Van Dam now busted open.
Yeah, very cool spot, and also a great example of Rob Van Dam's willingness and ability to take a DDT style bump, I should say, off of anything. Like, I believe that man could be snap mirrored and take a DDT bump.
He goes head first into the chair that's positioned in the corner.
This was horrible as well, and by horrible I mean terrifying. Like, it looked great, and they got a great camera shot of it, but man, I do not need to see this happen.
Khali throws Punk into the chains, and then Khali hits Punk with a top rope superplex. At this point, Test is in next. He hits Punk with a crowbar, then uses the crowbar to cut Van Dam further.
This crowbar, it's reminiscent to me of when Triple H would use the sledgehammer, where it takes me out of the match, because if you are using a crowbar in anger, like the height or the furthest you could go with that is it would kill somebody. And so then when you see, like, when Triple H would have the sledgehammer, then he would just hit people at the butt end of it, or here Test just using it to choke somebody. Like, it takes me out of it, because obviously I don't want to see somebody get killed, but then I don't want to see a weapon that you would have to, that's what you would have to do if you actually use it. Just it didn't work.
RVD hits Test and Khali with the chair, then skateboards it into the corner, hitting Punk. Van Dam hits the 5-star frog splash off the top rope onto CM Punk and gets the 3 count. Oh. He's out first. Wow. People are pissed.
Yeah. This is not good. It's not what people came to see. CM Punk get eliminated first. It was awesome to see a lot of CM Punk, Rob Van Dam interaction here going against each other. But I think, if anything, people were hoping against Soap, it would somehow come down to the two of them as the last two, particularly given the fact that Sabu was not going to be in this match, but instead, again, taking more air out of the already deflated basketball as CM Punk is eliminated first.
No, people were getting into those interactions, and then you just immediately told them, no, you're wrong. These guys are geeks.
Yeah. Well, again, because that was one of the only things on this show that felt like ECW. And so they had to nip that in the bud right away.
Test hits Khali with a big boot, goes for the pin, and it looks like Khali gets his shoulder up at 2, but the ref says it's 3, and Holly's out.
Yeah,
okay.
See, I actually had the exact opposite perspective on that. To me, it looked like he didn't get his shoulder up. The ref pulled up on the 3. It was supposed to be the 3. Nobody knew what to do. It looked really bad. The announcer said that Khali wasn't eliminated, but then he rolled out of the ring and we never saw him again. And unless he still is in Augusta waiting to pick his spot, I don't think that he remained in this match. I think he was officially eliminated.
Van Dam with a flying kick to Test off the top. RVD then he flips off the Big Show and climbs onto the top of Big Show's pod. Big Show, on top of the pod, it's just the chain, so he's able to reach through the top of the pod and grab the foot of Rob Van Dam, holding him there, which allowed Test to nail Rob Van Dam with a chair to the leg, then a chair to the head, then throws him off the pod. Test then comes off the top of the pod with a flying elbow onto the chair, onto RVD.
This flying elbow was rough to watch too, because he basically went full weight, hip first onto the chair, onto Rob Van Dam's head. And what happens here? 1, 2, 3. Rob Van Dam is eliminated
by Test.
And
ooh,
so
the people
now,
are pissed.
apparently, Bob Holly is also eliminated. So we are left with the final 3 in this ECW Extreme Elimination Chamber main event for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. It is Test, The Big Show, and Bobby Lashley. The other thing that happens...
The crowd did that math real quick.
Yes.
And then just loud bullshit chants from this crowd,
including little kids. I heard children's voices clearly in my ears chanting that. So the other thing that's so weird here about this match, and you or other people who have seen more Elimination Chambers would be able to tell me whether this is an aberration or not, but this fall happens, and then we still have 1 full minute, 60 seconds to kill until the next pod opens. This scene is repeated for each elimination the rest of the time, where it's at least 30 seconds, sometimes a minute or a little bit more.
A minute is usually the upper bound. What happens later with Lashley and the Big Show is the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
That does not happen very often.
But even this minute, it's so weird. It's just the match stops. We all wait for the pod to open 60 seconds or so later, and then the match resumes. I did not like this.
Lashley's.
Oh, by the way, the crowd also, you could hear light chants for a refund at this point.
Refund chants, that's right.
Never a good sign for your show if halfway through the main event the crowd is chanting to be refunded.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of people at home chanting the same thing. Yes. Lashley is in next, but Heyman's security guys take out the ref and they keep the pod locked, so Lashley can't get out. Lashley uses the table that's in the pod with him to break the chains above the pod, and then Lashley climbs out through the top of the pod.
It was kind of a cool spot, a cool visual. It was never going to work here because the crowd had made up their mind, that they didn't want to see this. Bobby Lashley was not the representative of ECW that they wanted. Clearly, Big Show or Test were not either. But in another time, on a different show, this would have gotten a great reaction.
Flying clothesline off the top on Test. Test then thrown into the pods, which it makes a great noise between the metal and the plexiglass and everything. It makes a great noise when you throw someone into the pod.
I feel like this is where wrestlers realized why some hockey fans like to pound on the glass.
Lashley then kicks the chair in Test's face. Big clothesline, suplex. He grabs the crowbar, hits Test in the gut, and then spears Test for the pin.
So if he hits Test in the gut with a crowbar, shouldn't Test's intestines be falling out? And if not, then let's not use that, because it just doesn't. It loses all credibility with me, and particularly on this show where believability was at an all-time high.
It's Lashley versus Big Show for the ECW championship, but we have to wait for the Big Show to be released from his pod.
A full minute as we see the Big Show standing menacingly with his very fake barbed wire bat. Paul Heyman is screaming at the Big Show to be ready. Lashley goes to his pod and gets the table out of the pod and throws it at the Big Show in the pod, which was pretty cool. Throws a chair at it as well. And the crowd does count along, because even as much as they're not into this show, there's nothing wrestling fans like to do more than count sequentially down from 10, and so we get that here.
Yeah, but it took a long time to get to the last 10 seconds. Holy cow.
It did.
So Lashley blocks Big Show's bat shots with the steel chair. The bat gets caught in the chains of the side of the chamber. Lashley then hits Show with a chair, then throws him into the chains. Lashley throws the Big Show through a pod, and Show is busted open. Show beels Lashley from the outside back into the ring. He goes for the chokeslam. Lashley reverses it into a DDT.
Which was quite the visual, seeing Bobby Lashley hit this flying DDT out of a chokeslam. But the crowd at this point just
do not care.
They do not care at all.
Lashley leaps at Big Show, who catches him, has him on his shoulder, but Lashley slips behind, hits the spear. Lashley with the pin, and he's the new ECW champion. He's met with indifference.
By everyone except for Joey Styles and Taz, who, to their credit, are screaming and ranting and raving.
These guys are pros.
Yeah. They are trying so hard, but this all feels more empty, more vacant than Kelly's eyes. We then get huge pyro to an almost comical degree on the entranceway as Bobby Lashley leads for the new ECW World Champion. So he said Bobby Lashley, and they sign off with Joey's voice completely muffled under the concussion blast sounds of these fireworks here in ECW.
So I promised at the top of the show that I'd tell you how the heck this happened. So again,
that means we're going to have a part 2?
No, we're going to do it right now. Again, Brian Alvarez reports Paul Heyman wrote the removal of Sabu from the Elimination Chamber.
Wow.
Sabu is one of many guys self-destructing, and apparently there was a situation at the Nassau Coliseum show where Sabu was unable to get through a promo. And think about that, given the length of Sabu promos.
Yeah, why is Sabu doing a promo? That's the first problem. But
Heyman went to Vince McMahon and suggested he be removed from the show. Sabu has not been fired, but needed time off and will be getting some sort of help. Lashley was Heyman's plan B to win the championship in case a deal with Bob Sapp fell through.
Wow.
The two sides had been talking for a while, and that deal fell through when Bob Sapp wanted the ability to do both fighting and pro wrestling. WWE wanted him to be wrestling exclusive. Lashley was planned to be the face of ECW for the foreseeable future, dating back several months. Heyman is said to have been paranoid about his position for months leading up to the show and appeared to start phoning it in around September when it became clear that his vision of ECW was never going to be the Vince McMahon vision. McMahon had made a number of demands, including toning down of the violence and Extreme Rules matches, feeling it was unacceptable to have one brand with no rules and unrealistic matches.
Then why did you...
Dave Meltzer reports that the Big Show, who was physically hurting and was planning on retiring and taking an offer to go into pro boxing.
He was huge here, by the way. We should mention this is as big as I've ever seen the Big Show. Just, and not in terms of being muscular, obviously, just a massive humanity at this point.
In this Elimination Chamber match, Paul Heyman booked the Big Show to be eliminated first.
Wow.
Tapping out to CM Punk's Anaconda Vice.
Wow.
Feeling doing so would make Punk's career. Heyman talked about going with a Rob Van Dam versus Punk program, which all of that sounds awesome.
Yes. All of that sounds great.
At the time, he was looking at making Punk one of the top guys in ECW behind Bobby Lashley, who Vince also wanted to make the number one on the brand as the original choice for the spot. Bob Sapp didn't sign. Big Show, who was personal friends with Heyman, had no qualms about being eliminated first, being eliminated by the Anaconda Vice of CM Punk. But Vince McMahon was dead set against it, saying it wasn't believable for someone who looked like Punk to submit someone the size of Big Show.
Noted UFC fan Vince McMahon. Clearly he had not watched Keith Hackney versus Emmanuel Yarborough in UFC 1.
Instead, Vince McMahon ordered Punk to be eliminated first.
Wow.
While not the only reason, or even the primary reason, the pay-per-view was a disaster, and Heyman and McMahon, they went at it after the show, screaming match in the back, eventually leading to Paul Heyman being fired from the writing team and eventually quitting the company. Vince was very upset about how the pay-per-view went down. Heyman was very upset with the limitations McMahon had given him, and that had resulted in an ECW product nothing like ECW of the 90s. McMahon ended the meeting telling Heyman to pack his bags and go home. So that's how that match went down.
The only person that could have possibly been surprised that that's how this played out must have been Paul Heyman, because I remember at the time, I think as much as all of us had hope, particularly people who were hardcore ECW fans and had watched the first two one night stand shows and were hoping against hope that this would be at least something reminiscent of ECW. The moment you saw that first episode of ECW on Sci-Fi, you knew that that's where this was heading.
Yeah, so it's it's pretty crazy. So when we were as shocked as anybody seeing Punk go out first, that was a Vince McMahon decree, and literally the opposite of what Paul Heyman wanted, with Big Show going out first.
We should also mention, sort of just as a coda to all of this, that this show, 3 hours of satellite time booked, it went, I believe, 2 hours and 18 minutes.
Yes, it was unbelievably short. And yeah, when you it really showed that, you know, there's no depth to this roster. When you put 6 of your top guys in one match, it exposes the lack of depth on this roster.
Well, think of how short this show was, and that includes that extremely long tag opener with the 4 guys who weren't part of ECW. That had to be, like I said, well over 20 minutes. And so even with that match being obviously stretched further than it should have been, they still didn't even get to the 2.5 hour mark overall for the event.
Horrible. The show was horrible. Can you find a favorite thing? Can you find a favorite thing on this show?
No, I mean, I would say that the most useful thing to me, the viewer, was having Joey Styles and Taz there to walk us through this show and provide some level of entertainment. I guess if I had to choose an actual best thing, I think by far it's the brief bits of interaction we had between CM Punk and Rob Van Dam before Punk got eliminated.
Yeah, that was absolutely great. The opener was fine.
Honorable mention to the individual fans in the crowd yelling things that amuse me.
Yes, those individuals in a quiet crowd yelling things that were actually funny.
It were actually funny, and were also deadly accurate. Where's the extreme? As valid of a question as you'll ever hear asked on a professional wrestling show.
So many worse things to choose from.
The existence of this show. The worst thing about it is that the randomizer chose it.
It did. The randomizer is the worst thing about this show.
We can't do a worse thing because we just spent the last hour plus talking about the worst thing. Everything. Like you can't pick one thing.
No, Alvarez at the top of the show, I read his quote. It summed it up. WWE seemed determined with this show to make everyone sad. Yes. And by the crowd reactions from the people in attendance, from the people who did buy it, and from anybody who watched it. Yeah, absolutely. This was not a fun show.
No, they should have rented out an aircraft carrier and put a big mission accomplished banner on it. That would have explained it perfectly. No, it was just sad.
How different would it have been with Bob Sapp in there?
Oh my God, yeah, with Bob Sapp in there, with CM Punk eliminating Big Show. Just what an alternate timeline that is. That would have been something. Sadly, it was not. In some ways, even though this was a mainstream WWE pay-per-view, when I think about how odd and random this show was and the backstory that you just laid out, this show almost would be more... would belong more in the bonus content feed,
yes,
than it does here in the free feed. But no, that is you guys got to hear that for free. You can hear even more crazy off the wall shows and some great shows and matches as well. But a lot of weird oddball stuff over on the bonus content feed.
That's right. Patreon.com/wrestling at random. You can sign up there for 1 month. The fee of 1 month, you unlock the entire back catalog of bonus content. At this point in that back catalog, there's over 40, almost 50 episodes there. So go and 1 month, you can unlock all of that additional bonus content. There's even a tier to be the randomizer. You can pick a show for us to watch. Plenty of patrons have picked some great shows for us to watch. One guy picked a terrible TNA show, but they're all over there in the back catalog of the bonus content. You can also subscribe to it via Apple Podcasts, right in your Apple Podcast feed. You can click it, subscribe for that 1 month fee, you again unlock the entire back catalog right in your Apple Podcast feed. And if this is now behind a different paywall, as this is always evergreen content, if it's behind a different paywall, we thank you for subscribing there to get all of the bonus content as well. And this, these episodes, the free feed, we love interacting with the people who listen to the show. You can interact with us. The best way is via Twitter at WrestleAtRandom. Same for Instagram. Facebook.com/WrestlingAtRandom as well. If you want to send an email, you can do that, wrestlingatrandom@gmail.com. All of the links that I just described are available on the website, wrestlingatrandom.com, including the entire back catalog of this podcast. You want to go hear about the history of ECW? Go back, search for that first ECW show, listen to the very first 10 minutes of that episode. And so with that, we are going to wrap it up. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. I can only hope that the randomizer takes mercy on us for the next episode of the podcast, because this was a challenge.
It was, and I want to thank everyone for listening. Talk to you again